Bengals have had a proud tradition of quarterbacks, from Ken Anderson to Boomer Esiason to Andy Dalton to Carson Palmer. Almost forgot about him. Ken Anderson, the quarterback back in the 70s, took to Twitter yesterday after Andy Dalton was cut by the Bengals and said that Andy has represented the city of Cincinnati and the Bengals quarterback family with class and success both on and off the field. I'm proud to call him a friend and wish him nothing but the best of luck. Wherever he goes, we'll be lucky to have him. #WhoDay. The Bengals had made the strategic decision to move on. They tried to trade him. They held on to him maybe longer than they should have. But hey, when you're in the last year of a second contract, there rarely are the kind of triggers in there that will force the team's hand. The team had the right, just like the Panthers did with Cam Newton, although I didn't agree with that either, to squat on the guy. And the music has long stopped on the starting quarterback carousel. And now Andy Dalton, like Cam Newton, like Joe Flacco, like Jameis Winston up until a few days ago, have to sit and wait and see what's out there. But the thing is, and the difference is between Dalton and Cam Newton, I think Dalton will take a backup job if that's all he can get. Cam's going to wait for a starting opportunity, and he should. But Dalton, you start looking at the teams, there's a lot of potential landing spots where he could upgrade the depth chart and help a younger quarterback get the most out of his skills, Big Cat.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The other difference between Andy Dalton and Cam Newton is if you believe that teams aren't actually sending doctors to give physicals, Andy Dalton probably doesn't need the same type of, scrutiny when it comes to a physical versus Cam Newton, who has a lot of question marks depending on how much money he's throwing on. But I agree with you. When you look at the backup quarterback position, it's kind of an irrelevant position for the most part in the NFL. Obviously, you'll look at Nick Foles and be like, hey, Nick Foles went and won a Super Bowl. That was the outlier. Most teams, if they lose their starting quarterback, the season's kind of over. But if you have a guy like Andy Dalton, he is a Teddy Bridgewater-like guy from last year where the Saints were able to win games without Drew Brees, keep the boat afloat, so to speak, and keep moving forward for their long-term plans. And I think that is an attractive option for any team out there that is thinking Super Bowl this year. Because if you're thinking Super Bowl this year and you get even a Patrick Mahomes, if Patrick Mahomes is out for longer than the 3 weeks or whatever he missed, having Andy Dalton is a heck of a lot better than having an unproven, 6th-round pick or a guy, career backup, who's just there to be a good teammate in the locker room like Chase Daniel. Not a ricochet shot, because I actually think Chase Daniel serves a purpose for what he does in terms of being that good team leader and teammate. But if you're trying to win, Andy Dalton is the guy that you want as your backup.
Well, and Big Cat, Howie Roseman, the Eagles GM, makes that point by pointing to the Mahomes situation from last year, because the Chiefs went 2-1 while Mahomes was out with Matt Moore. If they lose one of those games, they don't have the number 1 seed, and then all of a sudden the path to the Super Bowl is a lot more treacherous and difficult. So whether it's 5 games like Teddy Bridgewater played, whether it's 3 games like Matt Moore played, whether it's quarterback goes down in mid-December and the backup has to do the Nick Foles routine all the way through to the Super Bowl, you need to have a number 2 that you feel good about. And one thing I've noticed in recent years, there was a period where there weren't enough quality starting quarterbacks to go around. There are now. The question is, are there enough quality backups to go around? And there aren't. And here's Andy Dalton available. And you can get him now. You can get him at probably a reasonable price. And so the question becomes, which team is going to be the one to take a depth chart that they kind of already thought was set, although they'd have been foolish if they weren't at least considering the possibility that Dalton's going to be free and clear after they drafted Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. But now you have to ask yourself, do we take what we have and disrupt it by bringing in Andy Dalton as the number 2 behind our starter? Or in a place like New England, which reportedly wasn't interested in Dalton when he was under contract, now that he's available, does Bill Belichick say, well, okay, Jarrett Stidham, Andy Dalton, Jarrett Stidham, Andy Dalton, I'm going to go with Andy Dalton?
Now, Mike, let me ask you this about the backup quarterback position in the current free agents in Cam Newton and Andy Dalton, sitting as we stand right here on May 1st. Is there any, and again, this is not reporting at all. Everyone knows I'm not a reporter, but I feel like at least I've heard this. Is there any truth behind owners saying to themselves, let's hold off on signing someone until we know if we're playing a full season or not? Let's not go pay someone a bunch of money on a signing bonus, which might not be Andy Dalton's case, more Cam Newton's, until we are guaranteed that we are playing a full season and giving this money makes sense. Is there anything to do with that? Because it still is a little shocking to me that Cam Newton's a free agent.
I think with Cam Newton, the bigger impediment is not being able to determine that he's healthy, not to have your doctors put their hands on him and their eyes on him and understand that the ankle's fine, that the foot's fine, that the shoulder's fine, that there's nothing else that they don't know about from all those years of playing in a way that suggests he's indestructible when we've learned that he's far from indestructible, one injury at a time. So I think that's the impediment. I've been poking around this idea of what teams are doing to protect themselves against the possibility that there won't be a season. And they're all operating under the impression that there's going to be something. And I've yet to get the sense that anyone is deliberately restricting paying out money due to the possibility that there won't be a season. In fact, I thought most teams wouldn't sign their rookie draft picks. Some of the people I've talked to, their attitude is, hey, we're going forward. We're going to treat it like any other year. Now, the owner may say otherwise, but I don't think that's an impediment. I think the impediment is two things. One, making sure he's healthy. And two, what do you do with him? He's going to want a lot of money. You're going to have to make him the starter. Which team out there at this point could say to Cam Newton, here, you're the guy? I mean, the Chargers were one, but they have Justin Herbert, so they're off the list. You know, the Patriots, it's never felt like a match there. Scott Pioli, the former VP of player personnel in New England, said several weeks ago he doesn't see Bill Belichick and Cam Newton meshing. So I think for Cam, he's just got to sit and wait for somebody to get injured, whether it's Ben Roethlisberger in Pittsburgh. Again, somebody gets injured, and then there's a demand for Cam Newton. For Andy Dalton, he's going to find a spot. And now, look, you're not missing anything now because there's no offseason program. You're missing Zoom conferences. That's it. But I just don't think that the money is the issue from the perspective of we may not have a season. I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but I have yet to get the indication that it is.
Okay, so then follow-up question. Why did Jameis sign for so little? And I know he was saying, I know there were reports that he had bigger offers, but it seems like to me the Saints at that price, when you see the price, written out, you're like, okay, the Saints said, if we don't have a season, who cares? This is such a little amount of money for a guy who was, the number one pick 5 years ago. And yeah, Jameis has a lot of detractors, and rightfully so, with 30 interceptions last year. But if we go back to the conversation we just had about a quarterback being able to keep the boat afloat if your starter goes down, I think Jameis has a higher ceiling in that respect than a lot of teams' backups. And any team that's competing for a Super Bowl next year would want a backup like that versus a backup who might not be able to keep a team afloat if the starter does go down. So that whole thing made no sense to me, that he got paid so little. And besides the fact that an owner is saying, okay, for $1 million, yeah, we'll do it. Well, let's just do it.
Well, I think that there is a not-so-subtle psychology to dealing with Jameis Winston, and the Saints waited for the right time to swoop in and get this deal done. Post-draft, no takers for Jameis Winston, no starting jobs, and he went through that period, and I think he had to work through that period where once free agency starts and no one comes after him, and he's waiting, and at some point he has to come to the conclusion on his own, it's over for me right now. From the standpoint of a starter, I need to find a place where I can rebuild things. And the obvious landing spot, the Saints. When you consider what happened with Teddy Bridgewater, 2 years there. Next thing you know, he's got a 3-year, $66 million contract in Carolina. Jameis Winston's made $45 million in 5 years with the Buccaneers. 66 over 3 is a great outcome if he can get it. And going there and learning offense from Sean Payton and Drew Brees, it was the perfect time. You could argue maybe he'd be better off long haul, sitting and waiting for someone to get injured. But you know what? Cam Newton's going to be the first guy that gets called when that happens. So you got to wait for two guys to get injured now before you're back in. So I think that's what it was. It's not the money. It's Jameis Winston finally coming to the conclusion that he's not going to be a starter this year, and his best play to become a starter again is to play for the Saints.
So a recap of the backup quarterback carousel. Andy Dalton is – am I frozen?
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay, I'm frozen on my end, but as long as you can hear me, I'm going to power through. Andy Dalton going to get signed soon as a backup. Cam Newton might have to wait until the season starts, and there is that emergency, wow, our season could get derailed because our starting quarterback just got hurt.
Yeah, and Joe Flacco will just wait and wait and wait and wait and wait.
Yes,
indefinitely.
And Blake Bortles should be signed yesterday.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.